I am calling the meeting of the Architecture Review Committee to order. It is 7:04 p.m. There are no citizens to be heard tonight. There was no body that signed up. And so we're going to move to the consent agenda. And
Chairman, before,
Yes.
Brenda, can you call a roll call? Just make
oh,
sure.
I'm sorry. Yes, please.
Barry Middleman,
Here.
David Kilgore,
Here.
Kevin Chernus,
Here.
Anna Frias, Marietta Scott, Leslie Weber, Jason Smith.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
I move.
Who is that? Who's moving? Who, David?
David.
David Kilgore is making the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, and Kevin is seconding it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimously approved. Now we'll get to the meat and potatoes. I've got some good news for our committee. I've been talking with the city attorney, and other than about maybe half a dozen comments he's made, some of them grammatical, some of them were a little confusing to me. And I was hoping, I tried to call you today, David, because I had heard you had wanted a Word document, and I wanted to know what it is that you were planning to maybe modify, if the grammar was wrong, or if you made some of the same comments I had.
Chairman,
yes.
real quick, can you open up the agenda item on the discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
problem.
sorry. Discussion and possible action on tree-related ordinances and discussion concerning possible revisions. Now, the good news is that according to our city attorney, he likes what we've done. And there are very few modifications that I'm thinking we're going to have to make to what we've already accomplished. And he believes that we can have tonight come an agreement on all the comments that we need to make on anything that was still in question. And he thinks that if we can pass those on to him, he'll have a actual completed document to present to council next month. So this may be a real good progressive meeting, so we can move on to the next step. What I thought I would do tonight is I would like to go through these pages, and if anybody has any comments as I go, it'll be pretty fast. Like the definitions section, there are a couple of grammatical things they put in there. And David, if you see something on any of these pages that you check, that you want to question, please do. They put in the word code, and then they put in the word chapter at the end of that, and they've scratched out red oak as a shade tree. And that was pretty much it on the first page. Definitions on the second page. There's a lot of notes about sizes of ornamental trees. Some have been deleted, and you might want to kind of breeze through that and see if there's anything that you think that have been modified in a different way than what we had previously discussed. Any comments on that? Anybody?
No, it's I see we've stricken the undesirable or trash trees. That
Yeah, I'm not sure where we move those, but we'll keep moving along. Also, on the diameter and breast height, I question that because I was just commenting that Moretta had a graphic representation of how you measure DBH, and it was on different types of site conditions. And I thought it would be very handy for us to have that graphic within our ordinance, so it'd be very clear how they measure that. And it was crossed out for some reason. Anybody know why?
One of the questions we had was whether that graphic that she showed us was in the public domain and therefore free of copyright so that we could put it into our publications.
That, you're right from a legal standpoint, but if it's a published document, does that still not give us rights to use it?
We'd have to seek specific permission to use it.
And how do we go about that?
Contact the copyright holder and request it. That's something that the city attorney can handle for us. If there is not one of a similar illustration that is in the public.
Can we do
domain,
some cut and paste and change it?
No.
Move them around from what was last to first. I'm guessing that they didn't originally publish this. I'm guessing they took it from another source.
That doesn't make it right for us.
No,
to do so.
okay. So, I mean, Moretta's not here tonight, but if you or somebody would talk to Moretta, I haven't been able to reach her to ask her to get us the source of her publication so we can reach out to them to see if we can utilize that.
Yeah,
passage.
conceptually, I agree with the idea of putting a graphic in there to measure something as non-intuitive as DBH. Just want to make sure that we use the right illustration.
Well, on a slope piece of property, it's going to be very confusing to describe that with text.
Mhm.
So let's see if you wouldn't mind trying to reach out to Moretta. You'd have a little bit more mindfulness of the legal side of it. All right. So if we're all in agreement on page 2, when I go to page 3, it said impervious cover means, and we hadn't had a definition of it. So I looked up in the dictionary, Webster's dictionary, and impervious meant not permitting penetration of passage impenetrable. That was the definition in the dictionary. Do you all have a better definition for impervious cover? It basically is telling us that it's a hard surface that will not absorb water, and so it can damage tree root zones if it's not pervious cover within the root protection zone. And I don't want to get the wrong definition. I may talk to our arborist about maybe a better choice of words, but that came directly from the dictionary. And I'm not sure why all this was crossed out. That next paragraph about landscape area means area of a lot that is devoted to. Did we delete that at the last meeting?
We might have discovered that we didn't use the term anywhere in the.
Okay,
Yeah, we did not use it in.
so we took it out.
We took it out.
Okay, good. Check that. And then under pervious cover, they wanted a definition. The pervious cover definition in the dictionary is admitting a passage or entrance permeable pervious soil. So that's the definition in the dictionary. You all following me? Because these are definitions, and I'm trying to define these. They're being defined alphabetically. And the other thing in that page is the removal where there's been quite a bit of it crossed out. That may be another note. So may have been a note that was unnecessary for us to include because it's been crossed out. Any comments on that one?
Are you
On
speaking
page 3,
page 3?
under removal. See, the last half of that is
Gotcha.
crossed through.
I did check the document, and the landscaped area reference is probably stricken because it's not used anywhere else in the document.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, I just did a search on the Word version and didn't find that term anywhere except in the definition.
Okay. All right. Now, again, David, stop us if you see something that you would want to comment on. Next page is page 4. Wait a minute. No, I want to first go back to root protection zone. I'm not sure why they crossed out what I'd put in there, because what I was trying to express was for every caliper inch, we would be 6 inches of root protection zone radius. So if we had a 8-foot tree, we would have to have 4-foot radius. That's a radius, not a diameter, a radius around it. So I tried to describe it as saying a circle with a radius 6 times the DBH, which is what it is. Do y'all agree, or do you have a better definition than what I've expressed?
That makes,
No,
I think that accomplishes what we're trying to do. I agree that I don't understand why in the printed version we've given the definition is stricken, or the measurement is.
Do you have a different opinion, Kevin?
I'm looking at the wording of it 6 times the DBH. Well, the DBH is the height.
It's 6 times the
Yeah, yeah.
actual diameter of the tree.
So if you got a 2-foot, so you're
Tree.
gonna 6 times, you're gonna do 12 feet.
Yes,
So you're 6 foot, but we're.
you'd have a 12-foot radius.
Right, but we're also saying that you don't have to make it, you don't have to make it center. It could be.
No, you're right. And I don't know exactly how to put that
That,
in a
that
word.
was one of the things we were talking about changing, so.
I'm going to
like-
mention that. I'll mention that to the city attorney.
Yeah. And I think it was scratched out because your arborist was saying on actual job sites, that's not always accomplished. It's very hard to accomplish that on work sites. The arborist was saying that, which is a lot of times it would make an area too hard to work around.
The arborist said that?
Yes, sir.
Well,
He
that surprised me.
he would like that, but he was just saying he being realistic because it was.
Well, I was trying to be realistic because the city of San Antonio is 12 times. It used to be 6 inches for every 1 inch of caliper, or 6 feet.
12 inches for every.
Yeah, it used to be 6 times the caliper, and then they changed it to 12 times the caliper. And right now, the city of San Antonio has 12 times the caliper. And I'm sure a lot of people violate it, but technically, when the city staff would review the plans, and they'd see the tree and the size of it, they could judge whether they put a driveway or some impervious cover on both sides, say, of the tree that is in violation of our ordinance. Now, we've got to say something.
Yeah.
And I have every reason to believe that the live oak tree really is pretty hardy when it comes to proximity of impervious cover. I have trees that are 30, that I've lived there 30 years that are probably 6 inches away from concrete on all three sides, on 3 different sides, and it's prospered well. But there has to be some guidance on that. And I'll talk to Justin, our arborist, about that. Okay. Rest are grammatical there. Next page, which is page 4. Tree wells means a structure used to accommodate existing grade at the base of the tree. That's what it is. That's true. So that one's okay. They're just making grammatical corrections. They're saying tree survey means, or really it should just say tree survey produced by a civil engineer, licensed surveyor, licensed arborist. And then on the next one, showing all trees defined as protectable, because that's what's in the survey. We didn't need to say it again. And then the next one was identify the tree's caliber, species, existing topography, and with a number to be assigned and incorporated in a tree log. And a tree log summary including each numbered tree caliber and species. And they crossed out, it is recommended tree arborists be engaged by the property owner in order to implement the required summary of these details in order to assist in compliance with the city's tree ordinance. You know, that's an expensive proposition. And all I can say is the people that are doing the tree survey, whoever they might be, should be educated enough to be able to provide the documentation that we require. And I don't want to burden property owners with having to hire an arborist if he wasn't involved in the survey. Do y'all want that one crossed out like it has been?
Oh, I think it needs to be crossed out. I think it is a burden on
What
property owners.
I was making another note. I'm sorry, I didn't hear where we are in the
I
discussion.
said they've crossed out where it says it is recommended that a tree arborist be engaged by the property owner in order to implement the required summary of these details in order to assist in compliance with the city's tree ordinances.
Mhm.
And what I said was, I think maybe why it's crossed out is because whoever prepares the survey, be it an arborist or anyone, is supposed to be educated enough to be able to produce the document that we require in order to get his permit. And I don't know that the actually hiring an arborist on top of the one that did the survey is a little bit excessive and expensive.
I agree with that. I think since everybody who wants to remove a tree is going to have a survey, then, and the survey can only be produced by a civil engineer, licensed surveyor, or an arborist, then
Okay,
I
let's
don't
leave
think
that.
that bullet point is necessary. I would recommend on the second bullet point, that it reads showing all protectable trees with protectable and trees in capitals, since it's a defined term, on a graphical survey. So that because I know we've always found it very useful to have the plat of the property with the trees designated where they sit in relation to buildings and other trees. So having it on a graphical display is very helpful.
You're talking about the bulletin that says showing
All
trees defined as protectable.
right. Instead of saying defined as protectable, since we've already defined protectable trees, just use that defined term again. So showing all protectable trees on a graphical survey.
Okay,
Maybe that's what they took out.
I know, and I don't understand why.
are showing all protectable trees on the survey.
On a graphical survey. Graphic survey.
Okay,
I would recommend keeping that if the person who struck that has more insight into why it was stricken.
I'll put out that all surveys are graphical.
Good, okay, then we can take out graphical. and just
Yeah.
say
Well,
survey
yeah.
On the survey.
On the survey, yeah.
well, I put it in. I don't know who crossed it out, but that's okay.
Well, I can, if graphical and survey are redundant with each other, then on the survey would be just fine.
Okay,
Actually, you can put that bullet point 2 and 3 together. Just add. Define the protectable trees on the survey.
well, the tree survey,
That's,
it's all under the outline of the tree survey.
that says the survey, so identifying the tree caliper size, species, topographical, and number to be assigned and incorporating the tree log, including trees to be saved. But it can be the way.
You've lost me. Say that again.
You just add, you can just add and trees to be protected. But it's fine, leaving it 2 different ways. Because it's on the survey. Everything is a survey.
Yes,
Oh, now I know why they struck are to be indicated on the graphic survey is because it's redundant with the fact that we're talking about the survey itself.
Yeah.
That's why it's stricken. So it's,
Right.
well, then
need
you
a
want to
survey
take out
that
the
is-
trees on the survey
Oh, showing all.
that you added?
the way it's written, you need a survey. And the characteristics of the survey are it's produced by a civil engineer, licensed surveyor, or licensed arborist. It shows all protectable trees. It identifies the tree's caliper, species, existing topography, et cetera. And it includes a tree log that includes the numbered trees and caliper and species. Those are the
So we-
characteristics of the survey we're talking about. That's why in that. So yeah, that I agree now with the person who struck.
Okay, so so the second bullet will say showing all protectable trees, period,
Mhm.
right?
Third bullet would say identifying the tree's caliper, species, existing topography, et cetera. As it's written. And that survey would include a tree log summary, including each numbered tree's caliper and species.
Right, right.
So
So we're good there.
I think as edited, it's fine with the change of using protectable trees as its defined term in the second bullet.
Okay, so they have put in, he's crossed out all the ordinance numbers, our city attorney, so
Yeah.
he must have, rationale for doing that. And he said, don't bother with any of that.
Mhm.
Now, let's see. Tree preservation and mitigation. It is a required mandate to preserve a minimum of 40% of the total sum of protected trees, which we have defined what are
Where
protected
are you
trees.
reading?
I'm on the bottom of page 4,
He's on.
tree preservation
on the
and
new-
mitigation.
David,
Yes, sir.
he's on the new one.
Is this the old one?
Oh, okay. Oh,
This is one that I
Oh,
took off
okay.
and read his desk.
okay. I saw writing on there. I thought that was
Oh,
your notes.
Oh,
from
that's,
last time.
that's my writing.
Okay.
No, all it says is tree preservation and they put in mitigation.
Got it. I
And
see.
then it said it is required, they crossed out and said it is required to mandate to preserve a minimum of 40% of the total sum of protected trees in the tree surveys, tree log. 20% of the total sum requires a minimum mandatory tree preservation of existing protectable trees. All trees on the protectable tree list with a caliper of a minimum of 8-inch or in multitude trunk species will be calibrated into the total collection number of caliper inches on the tree log. Then I say the other 20% of required tree protection can be mitigated by either planting the equivalent in caliper inches required with a minimum of 3-inch caliper. You know, those are the most practical from a cost standpoint, the 3-inch calipers. When you start getting into larger new trees, it gets very expensive. So that's why our arborist said 3-inch. And then our pay a mitigation fee of $100 per caliper inch of the removal of the balance required tree caliper inch protection, exception with approval of the city manager or his designee, the removal of heritage trees, minimum 24-inch caliper will pay a mitigation fee of $300 per caliper inch. The mitigated monetary financial sum will be collected and deposited into the city tree fund. The city tree fund is established to fund city planning and public common areas. Everybody okay with that?
Chairman, real quick, I think between Mr. Zamorano and I talking about some things, when we start talking about it, and I don't necessarily if this is the time, but we start talking about funds going into some type of tree mitigation, it might be something we designate towards oak wilt. Right now, you know, we've tried to combat oak wilt by having arborists go out and take a look at an individual property to assess, but we currently, you know, necessarily don't have a line item per se to have that.
Why don't we add oak wilt to that list of what would be included in the for remedial for the mitigation fee would be, besides planting new trees.
I only say that because again, that in the last year or so, this council has done a lot to sort of ramp up the ordinance on oak wilt. And it costs us an individual, it's cost of the city for an individual arborist to go out and assess each property to tell them what they need to do to remedy the situation. So it might be good to designate those funds
All right,
towards that
let's see,
cost.
the city tree fund is established to fund city planning and the control of oak wilt. That good? By the way, there's a tree on my street that is dead as a doornail. And I think it was from oak wilt, but I don't know what the city or I can do about something like that. It's could spread around the neighborhood, I imagine. Can the police or somebody come by and tell him that tree is dead and is going to have to be removed for the fear of oak wilt?
So in the past, I'll let Louis address that, because in the past, we would get the A&M Forest Service to come out at some point, but now, again, having an individual arborist come out and assess each property when we suspect oak wilt. Go ahead, Louis.
That's a two-part question, sir. The answer to the first part is yes, I can have my code officer go out and order the tree removed. But the second part of the question, whether it's oak wilt, we're not qualified to make that assessment. So we have to have an arborist come out and make that assessment. You know, on the one hand, we can get rid of the problem and cut the tree down just by the naked ordinance as it is now, or we can get a little deeper into the weeds and see if it was oak wilt as a cause of that tree that you're talking about dying. So that's kind of the two courses that we have.
Does the city have the money to engage a arborist consultant like Justin to come and inspect those trees?
We have one on call, but as far as the actual money allocation, that's a Mr. Rapley question.
Yeah, again, we don't have a dedicated line item. We've been able to fund it, but there's not a dedicated line item to an arborist that we'd have on call to go out and assess the properties. Again, we've just been able to absorb it in the budget, but it might be helpful in these cases to have a dedicated fund like a tree mitigation fund that says this will help fight oak wilt by funding an arborist to assess properties.
Well, I'm saying, it's saying to fund city planning and oak wilt control. How about that? Oak wilt control?
If I may suggest, oak wilt, other legislative process have referred to it as oak wilt mitigation.
Mitigation.
They again, call it mitigation?
Correct.
Mitigation.
Okay, and oak wilt. Is it WILT?
WILT, yes, sir.
Okay, mitigation, okay.
That seems to be an encompassing word, meaning assessment, remediation, or removal.
Now, I don't know how a tree can become diseased when it's among many trees, and that's the only tree that just is dead, no leaves or anything on it.
Just out of curiosity, what street?
It's on Castle Gardens.
I can have
It's
my
that
officer
big,
go out
it's
there.
that big 3-story white building at the corner of LaRue Court in Castle Gardens. And it's right on Castle Gardens, those trees. You'll see one dead tree among the rest of them.
I know this is off topic, but we do have an analogous case on this side of town. The 2 trees appear to be dead, and the arborist did go out and made an assessment, and it did not have to do with oak wilt. It was actually a really localized disease, but it's neither here.
So
nor there.
you can't make them remove the tree.
You, by code, you can have any dead tree removed. Dead trees
Okay.
have to be removed, period. Period.
Well, why don't y'all have our city attorney kind of formulate the language for this particular item so we can cover both the dead trees and the oak wilt dead trees. I don't know how else to discuss it or describe it. You said you have a city arborist on call?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
It's obviously a private contractor, but he is on call. We've used him before on a pretty in-depth study on Prince, and his results were spot on.
Okay. Well, as a backup, you can use the one that's consulted with us throughout this tree survey, because he's not only a contractor, but he's a real qualified tree arborist.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Again, I think first and foremost is to determine if it's oak wilt. And I think that's the approach we need to take, is to try to, like Louis says, mitigate that oak wilt. And if it find out it's something else, then at least the arborist gives the property owner a different course of action to address whatever that diseased tree may be. But again, I think oak wilt is first and foremost of what we need to state that these funds would go towards, because that's the biggest thing we need to combat is oak wilt.
I'm going to take a picture of that tree, and I'm going to send Louis the picture and the address of the party. Okay. All right. So,
So I'd like to get back to this mitigation
mhm.
line item for a moment. We have definitions already of heritage tree and protectable trees in the definitions section. So when we talk about in that paragraph that says all tree, the last sentence on my copy, it's highlighted in green. All trees on the protectable tree list with a caliper of a minimum of 8 inches or multiple trunks, et cetera. That is redundant with our defined term, and it conflicts with our defined term in certain aspects. So I would recommend, I'm not exactly sure what that sentence is trying to accomplish. Either strike the
you wanna just
sentence or
take that
just
whole
refer
sen-
to protectable trees and not further define what a protectable tree is there.
Well, you want to just take all that green out?
I'm thinking so. I don't understand what the purpose of that sentence is. So
If it's redundant, there's probably no reason. Because we're saying protectable trees, and we define protectable trees in other than 8 inch. So I bet I'm getting off course by putting 8 inch. You leaving?
I think I see,
Chairman,
I think you
if
see an
excuse me,
edit.
I have to leave, pick up my daughter. But you're in good hands with Mr. Zamorone and Mr. Craig.
Okay, thank you.
I think if we strike from that green highlighted sentence, the part about with a caliper of a minimum of 8 inches or in multiple trunk species. strike that so that it will now read, all trees on the protectable trees list will be calibrated into the local total collective number of caliper inches on the tree log.
Okay,
Or we could just say all protectable trees. Because that's a defined term, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true too. Yes.
all trees on the protectable tree list.
All
Or just
protectable
all
trees.
protectable trees, make it a
Okay.
defined term.
Use the defined term.
Take the on the, all tree protectable,
All protectable trees
all protectable trees.
with. All protectable trees will be calibrated into the total collective
Yes.
number of caliper inches on the tree log is the. new reading
Okay,
of that
That's what
sentence.
we'll do.
Same thing in the next paragraph where we talk about the removal of heritage trees, minimum 24-inch caliper. We should strike that reference to the caliper.
Okay. But I think I had intended to put in there somewhere that heritage trees were inadmissible to be removed unless they have the approval of the city manager. Because those are kind of a prized tree and we can't, and they are classified differently and the mitigation's more expensive for the heritage trees than the others. So that's a very sacred tree. Just for the record. So any other comments on that page by anybody?
Let's
Page
work through this
5.
part about heritage trees for a second.
Okay. I took out minimum 24-inch caliper.
Mhm.
So it says removal of heritage trees will pay a mitigation fee of $300 per caliper inch.
Right. So is that accomplishing what you were?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. $300 a caliper inch, and think about a 24-inch tree. That's 24 times 3. That's what? $7,500. something like that.
$7,200.
It
Yeah,
goes back to an issue of I've had with this mitigation fund all along, is that it just lets people buy tree death. If you write a big enough check, you can clear cut your lot if you want to. And I don't agree with that.
Well, they can't, not under our ordinance. They have to either save or mitigate 40% of the trees on the site.
Or pay money.
No, only the 20%, it's mandated they be kept,
Okay.
period. They're protected 20%. The other 20% of the 40%, it can be mitigated or planted with the equivalent of sizes of trees. They're not, that's not waived just by writing a check. 20% of the trees have to be saved.
So you've got to save 40% of the total protected trees in the survey. 20% of the total sum requires a minimum mandatory tree preservation of existing protectable trees.
Right. Is that how it's
So,
written?
so you can take 60% of the trees out by default.
Yes,
Okay, so 60% of the trees are gone. Of the 40% that remain, 20% of 40%. And I went to law school, so I didn't have to go to math school. So I don't know what that number is.
it's 20% of the total number of caliper inches.
20% of
Whatever
the
the total
total
is.
sum requires a minimum. I think that's what we've left ourselves with. We say 20% of the total sum, but we don't necessarily say total sum of what. So how
Of
can we
total
clear
caliper of the
total caliper inches on the property?
on the property?
Okay, let's say that.
Well, tell me where you're putting it.
Page 5, the top of the page.
Top of page 5, where we talk about 20% of the total sum requires a minimum
What do
mandatory.
you suggest?
20% of the
Total sum of total caliper inches on the property.
of the sum of total caliper inches on property. Let's try that one, yeah.
And where are you putting that?
Total sum of 20% of the total sum of caliper inches on the property.
Total sum.
20% of the total sum of 20% of the sum of total caliper inches on the property. Mm, Bless you.
Sometimes.
Excuse me.
So-
Why don't, I can talk a little bit to Mark Schnall and let him put some kind of legal
Yeah,
definition
I-
of this.
I think the point we're trying to make is that 20% of the total caliper inches of protectable trees
Is
on the
mandatory.
property must be preserved.
That's mandatory.
Okay. 20% of the total.
Now, they can
caliper
save
inches on
all
the property
40% and
Must
not,
be,
they can save the whole 40% of trees and not bother with having to mitigate them. If they save all 40%, we're just giving them an option on the other half of the protectable of the trees that have to be protected. Since David, you have the Word document, you might want to put that in on.
I'm not sure I have the right version of the Word document.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna discuss this in principle with Mark Schnall and tell him what we're trying to arrive at. And
Mhm.
maybe he can put it in some poetic language. Okay,
Yeah,
I think we all know what it is. It's just,
I've made a
Kinda-
stab at it and I'll work on it a little bit more as well.
I'll be happy to look for my Word document and see if you can match it with this one. I just don't know. I've made notes on this. I'll update what I've got, I think, or just, I may scan with my comments on this and send it to him. So he'll clearly see there are changes to what he had said. I think that there weren't any other comments.
So what we're saying is, if I read this whole section together, the intent we're trying to convey is that 40% of the protected trees measured as defined by caliper inches, 40% of the caliper inches have to be preserved. You've got two ways to preserve it.
Yeah, well,
20% have got to be physically left alone. You can't take that 20% out. The other 20% of the trees on the property, the other 20%, actually it's the other 50% of the 40%.
that's where it gets
Yeah. So
confusing.
what it is it's 50% of the 40% that have
I'll
to be
say the
protected.
other
can be
50%, the other 50%.
Buy your way out of protecting those trees by paying into the mitigation.
The other 50% of the 20% of the 40% can either be planted with the equivalent.
You can replace or you can pay,
Yeah,
and it's the checkbook holder's prerogative to-
okay.
to figure out which one of those they want to do.
Replace or remove for mitigation fee. Okay. Let's going through the rest of this. I didn't have any comments. Y'all might want to peruse it, but he didn't really, he put in a few new grammatical corrections and then crossed out the ordinance numbers and otherwise, by the way, I don't know who this KD is. Does anybody know that? Do you know, Louis, who putting the initials KD on here? Who that could be?
No, sir.
I assume that's somebody in Mr. Schnall's office.
No, it's not. I asked him today.
Okay,
He gave me the guy's name that has assisted him here at Castle Hills. Now, if it was DK, it could have been you.
I would raise my hand and say it could be me.
Okay.
I
You
have
just misspelled your,
just
you
spelled my own name.
misspelled your initials.
I do have a question about section 48-24,
Okay.
right before this tree preservation and mitigation section we've been talking about. Here we say this article applies to all zoning
That's what I
districts.
wanted.
And I know and I think the current version as published of the ordinance, we carved out some exceptions and we've talked about that all along. One of the things that I want to make sure we're clear on is, as I understand the current draft of the ordinance, it requires anybody who wants to remove a tree to go through the survey process.
So that.
You know, that's too general in nature. I think we had agreed that, and I don't think the language is in here, that I think we agreed that all zoning districts were required to maintain heritage trees. Otherwise, it wouldn't have included individual residents, existing residents that would choose to remove other trees. Because we were really talking about new development more so than the property owners that want to remove some trees because they may be leaning against the house or something like that.
So in 48-57, application for individual tree removal. We say that a request for tree removal must be in writing and provide at a minimum explanation, a survey, photographs, and such other information as may be required by the ARC.
They
So-
changed that because it was not, it originally excluded homeowners.
I don't want it to exclude
Well,
a zoning. I just wanted to, I don't want, but it maybe needs to grandfather homes that are already
well, we got,
built.
I have, this is one of my biggest issues right here, because I'm gonna think we're gonna put a burden on home lots. One existing, if they want to do something, even if they want to take out a heritage tree, put a pool in, they should be able to without an excess cost. If we tell them they have to pay an extra $10,000 for that pool, because, and it's going to be under the 20%, because like I said, some of these lots are small, they only have 2 trees, or a whole lot, they only have 3 or 4. And so, well, just
one
let me
thing-
go through the couple of different ones. But if you don't mind, and then also building a new house. I've used Mr. Conley, when he built the house over down West Avenue, they took out 2 heritage trees. There's no way around it. With this new code, we would have put $20,000 extra cost to it.
No, they can get approval from the city manager.
And it does not say that in here, that he can take away the fee.
Okay, maybe that's what it
That's,
is.
and so that's where we have to be very careful. We're gonna limit our growth then, because then people won't be able to build a house. And if you add
Well-
$20,000 to it.
I do and don't agree with you. I agree that until this ordinance is adopted, everyone else is grandfathered. All existing homes and properties that are existing in which they want to remove trees are grandfathered under the old ordinance, which allows them to remove trees. This is going to be in place once we adopt the ordinance. But it seems to me like if they're building a new house, they have a legitimate reason for removing a heritage tree, then I think they need to get approval of the
Well, they
city
have to.
manager. Huh?
No, they have to. They had to come before us. Just like Mr. Conley, to remove the trees, he had to come before us, but there wasn't a mitigation for it. And that's where, taking the tree out was not a problem. And we agreed there was no other way to put the house on the lot.
Well, that would be a reason to get our approval.
Right, but we have to have that in writing, that
Okay.
there is no cost to them.
Let me explain that to him, the city attorney, and let him find the right location and the application of how
Okay.
you're describing it. Because what he's gonna do is gonna have a draft done with hopefully all these changes we've discussed. And I'll try and get them through Ryan to all the committees so they can review it again before our next meeting. So if they have to still do some more editing, we can do that. Or if he hadn't explained it the way we want to do it, he can still do that.
Okay.
I'm even thinking that, and Louis, I'm on the committee in which we're writing a comprehensive plan for the city of Castle Hills. I'd like to get language within our comprehensive plan about that there'll be a new vegetation and tree ordinance as part of our comprehensive plan. I mentioned that, I think I mentioned it to Jack today, because I want to warn people that wouldn't normally read go through and read the ordinances. I want to warn people that they should, because our comprehensive plan is saying will be modification to the vegetation and tree preservation. So they don't have any excuse of not knowing about it.
I agree, sir.
I think we've done a pretty good job all in all. And I know there's going to be people that are going to say, oh no, that's way too many trees being removed. But you've got to put it in perspective. And people are paying a lot of money for a piece of property.
Yeah.
But we want to maintain the growth of trees and encourage people to maintain the growth, the beautiful trees that we have now. But it's impossible in almost all cases to save all the trees. So you've got to put some kind of definition of or percentage of what can be removed. So they can randomly pick wherever they want to remove those trees, as long as they do the 20% for positive and the other 20% of the 40% have to be mitigated. And that language, I have the San Antonio tree ordinance, and I'll see how they've explained it, because I've kind of modeled this after some of the things they've done.
Okay. And also something else on going back to this 20%. I'm just looking at some of the lots around. When they go put, I'm just going to use an example. The house is right up here near Walgreens. They've got two lots for sale. They've got a lot of trees on there. They could take out, a number of trees, build a house. I'm not sure then, they might go over that number, but they're not going to be able to replace them if they, the number, because they've got there's so many large trees.
What lot are you talking about?
What's right up here?
Walgreens, CVS or
Or
Walgreens?
CVS, I'm sorry, CVS, right next door to, there are so many, he's selling two lots next in front of him. And, if they go try to build a house there, they're gonna have to take out a number of trees.
Well,
And you're-
we're gonna let them take out 60% of the trees.
Right, but he's not gonna, but if he, well, I guess we'd have to go look at the number, where they put the house and just, sometimes you're not
All
gonna be
they
able
have
to
to
put,
do
you're not
is-
gonna have to put more trees in.
I just don't want to,
I understand you don't want to make a commercial where somebody goes wipe it out. I agree with you on that.
we're talking about new development.
Right, yes.
We're not talking about existing. I can understand the rationale of people on their property taking, I had a tree that was leaning against my house and I had cable to cinch it, to pull the limb away, and finally it wasn't doing the job and it crushed my gutter and it was gonna create problems structurally with my house. So we had, I asked Justin, who's with Wise Guys Tree Service, if they could just take that limb off. And many times you can't take one limb off because it'll kill the tree. You can only take certain portions of a tree off to prune it. And he said my whole tree had to come out. And so we just need some control here. We just can't let it go rampant.
I agree. I just don't want to put a burden on homeowners.
I agree with
And
that.
that's, and stop, development of new homes too, or remodeling or stuff.
I
That's-
think we consider, I think we can consider existing homes that want to do any tree removal grandfathered.
Okay,
Existing homes or existing homeowners?
Well, I think the homes, I don't know why it wouldn't transfer with the new owner. Because the property was already built.
well, we've already definition, the only person who could do this are the, homeowners or the leasees. So,
Yeah.
Well, I think we've accomplished a lot. It seems like it's been very tedious, but I think it was worth it. And I think that the fact that it passed the acid test, if you will, with our city attorney, he's a pretty tough guy, says a lot for our committee and how we've labored over this. And I think it's going to be a good move for the city of Castle Hills to have control over this. I can tell, I was going to bring this up, Louis, is I'm seeing existing buildings being in some way remodeled. And they're not, none of them seem to be coming up to the Architecture Review Committee for approval. And yet we were wasting our time with one lousy tree in a driveway, spending all of our time, which made logical sense. Where do we draw the line when people remodel a building to make it required that they submit to the Architecture Review Committee?
Well, that would be up to you, but I can address what we're currently doing in a comment that was made earlier about grandfathering properties in. The code specifically says if there's an improvement on a residential lot, then for the lack of a better phrase, the owner can clear cut that lot. So if they're going to be doing a remodel, they can clear cut the lot. If you're going to grandfather them in and the house was built in 1975 and they decide one day to take a hatchet to it, if they're grandfathered in, well, the code says that they can do that. The
But that's-
current code that they would be grandfathered under says they can do that. So the litmus test there is there an improvement on the lot? An
Well,
improvement being a habitable structure.
Yeah, that would be a legal issue. We may want to talk to Mark about, but what I'm concerned about though is not residential. I'm talking about retail. I'm talking about commercial. And like the new sandwich shop that took where the flower shop was, that round glass window, bias or Billis, it's great.
Zornia, Northwest Military, yes, sir.
Pardon?
That's Zornia, Northwest Military. Bilba,
Well, they moved.
Bilba, yes, sir. They're at the corner of Zornia now,
I know,
across from
but
Susquehanna.
but They didn't have to go before the architecture review committee?
Well, I'm not aware that they removed trees.
Pardon?
I'm not
I'm
aware
not
that they
talking about
removed
trees now. I'm talking about.
substantial redevelopment.
Yeah, well, substantial. How do you define substantial?
Exactly right, sir.
So I can understand if they're just painting a building. But if they're making any, remember what happened at Golden Chick? They told y'all that there weren't any exterior remodeling. It was gonna be as it was. And as soon as I saw the plans, look at it. Does that look like a Popeyes now? It was a Popeye, I mean, not a Popeyes, it was a
Jack in the
Jack in the
Jack in the
Box. And so I don't think that even though we want development in Castle Hills, we're gonna need to define what remodeling, because most of this is gonna be existing buildings. We don't have a lot of new land. How do we define a point in which it would require that they go before the architecture review board for
50%,
approval?
50% of the current valuation of the property would be a standard. This is what we do for replacement of roofs or substantial replacement of a house. If it's 50% the value, for instance, a house burns, but it's still standing, but it needs renovation. We did that on Blewett, and we did that on, so that would be Honeysuckle. 50% of the valuation. I've had my code officer stop work on 50% of the valuation of a roof when a contractor has said it's simply repair. But it's substantially more, and the value rises to 50% more of the value of total re-roof. So that's the standard that we use now on the permitting side, is 50% the current valuation of the property.
What about the existing building? Not parts of the building, but the building. If say they remodeled the exterior of the building, at what point does it make it necessary for them to go for the architectural review board? You can't take 50% of the valuation because the property may be more expensive than the building.
Well, what I guess I misquoted myself, the valuation of the building. And that information is gleaned from BCAD.
Pardon?
That information is gleaned from the Bear County Appraisal District
Yeah,
website.
but they're gonna get a free ride because the property, the value of the property may be more than the building. So that's gonna make it easy for them to have less than 50% the value of the property and
Of the building, 50% value of the building.
We need to rethink that because if they're painting a building pink and green or something like that, there's got to be some measure that we have control over from a design standpoint. And in the case of that particular building where the Billis went in, it looks like they haven't really made anything but mostly cosmetic changes.
Right.
But I haven't noticed yet, but they may have a rooftop air conditioning equipment that's exposed, and we're supposed to be screening rooftop equipment and dumpsters. And that's what I would have probably required on my behalf as the architecture review committee to maintain the cleanliness of the city.
Still a code violation.
What is?
If, for instance, if there is no screening mechanism for a rooftop HVAC system, didn't come in front of you for review, but they did it anyway. In this particular case, perhaps they weren't aware that they have a screening mechanism. It becomes a code issue. And my code officer can send them a letter telling them you're going to have to screen off that device.
So
The
you said
rooftop
it's
units.
already in our code?
I believe so, sir. It's definitely on the application. The application that I send out to these businesses for substantial remodeling asks for a rendering of screening devices for rooftop units.
All right, well, I'll go by there and see if it's screened. You remember the HEB gas station? When they came to present it to us, we told them it had to be screened. And for months, they didn't bother to screen it. And I kept harping on it until they finally were forced to screen that rooftop equipment. I mean, we've got to be careful about exceptions because you're setting a dangerous precedent. Even if you don't want to, and you want to take it a case by case basis, the reality is you are setting a precedent if you allow one business to get away without screening rooftop equipment and others not. So if you can send me the portion of the code that, or your application of how it reads, I'd like to know because, you know, a lot of new businesses are coming into places where the roof did not have screening on the air conditioning equipment. And we've got to decide from a legal standpoint whether we can go back, if they're getting a building permit, if we can go back and require that they screen the equipment. Anybody have a comment on that?
I would defer to the city attorney on what cities can and cannot do.
Okay. Any more discussion? Otherwise, would someone like to make the motion to adjourn the meeting?
I have more discussion, but it's
Okay.
very brief discussion.
Go ahead.
I would like to have an electronic Word version of the ordinance in its semi-final form, distributed before our next,
Oh,
well in
okay.
advance of our next meeting, so that we have, you know, more than a day or so to look at it and proof it and confirm.
I'm
that
gonna
it's-
I'm gonna send, I gotta do it through this,
Right,
right. I'm gonna send the latest, after your comments, I made my comments in green, I believe. And I'm gonna send that Word document to you. And then you can compare that against what Mark Schnall has done. And I'm also gonna scan all my red marks that I put on mine. So you'll have a complete picture and can mention, you can talk. It's my understanding one committee member can talk to one other committee member. I just can't do it to everyone. So if you see something on there that you think we misinterpreted, go ahead and make the correction, but try and do it in a color. So we'll be able to identify that when we get.
yeah, Word does a pretty good job of changing each editor's comments to a different, or
Yeah.
edits to a different
Yeah.
color, so I'm not worried about that. I do want to make sure that whatever we work from is the city attorney's most recent version, because when I asked Mr. Rapley for it, I don't know that I got, what I got is not the same as what was in our,
You know, maybe I'll ask Mark Schnall to send us his Word document.
or route it through the city manager. I'm not that concerned about how I get it. I just want to make sure that we
Right.
are all
The
working
city
from the
attorney
most
had-
recent.
Had no objections to me calling him directly.
Okay.
Talked to him this morning. Any other business? Do I hear a motion?
I move, we adjourn.
A motion was made by David Kilgore to adjourn the meeting. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Jerome, what's your last name?
Smith.
Smith. I can't remember Smith. Jerome Smith.
Jason.
Jerome Jason Smith seconded the motion to adjourn the meeting. All in favor, say aye or raise their hand.
Aye.
Okay. The meeting is formally adjourned at 8:12 PM. Thank you, everyone.